Turkey and so where do I begin? Well, how about this? I think we all know that from the early decades of the 14th century until 1650, back in the Middle Ages, continental Europeans executed up to 500,000 people who were supposedly called witches. 85% or more of them were women. And these were people who weren't just strictly practicing witchcraft, but also people who were involved in any kind of practice or thinking or belief system that seemed to contradict the particular biblical interpretations of a priest or similar religious representative in a certain region. So you had these pockets of people where you had the big priest here who was supposed to be the enforcer of the word of God, but the priest would just abuse that, and the priest and his minions would abuse this in many cases and just use it in order to become an authoritarian figure, to illegally confiscate people's wealth, and to do terrible things to them. And of course, back during that period of time, if you were just accused by the right people of believing in something outside of the biblical context of the region, then there was a very good chance that you would be horribly tortured. And of course, beyond that, it was quite common for people to be executed in various ways, especially burned. And of course, this sort of thing also spread to some of the earliest figures we would call scientific pioneers. I mean, we all know, of course, about Galileo, the early astronomer, being arrested and tried and convicted by the Catholic Church for saying that basically maybe the heavenly bodies don't function the way that they believed. But you may also know about Giordano Bruno. You know, Galileo was an Italian. Giordano Bruno was an Italian philosopher and astronomer, and he was saying the same thing, that he believed in this Nicholas Copernicus idea that perhaps the Earth is not the center of the universe, maybe the Earth moves around the sun, and they burned him alive at the stake. This was a very realistic part of life back then. And so during that period of time, especially around Italy, if you breathed a word that seemed somehow inconsistent with, again, the local religious interpretation of an often tyrannical individual, you were putting your life in great jeopardy. And the worst thing you could do is be caught with some type of manuscript that might be considered a grimoire or a book of spells. Okay, if you had the guts to harbor a book of spells somewhere on your property, to hide it on your property, I mean, you were risking everything. And of course, most people had to be pretty intelligent to even be able to read and understand texts back at that time. But some people, you know, they were able to keep them translated and distributed around as contraband that we have copies of. Came out of Italy, and this was a book that would get you killed in a heartbeat. It was called The Key of Solomon. And this actually was, it ended up giving life to a second book called The Lesser Key of Solomon. I'll get into this in a second. This subject's a little bit complex, but basically here's what you need to know. We have got this very early book of spells called The Key of Solomon. And in fact, if you look at the history, they say here that, again, this was kept so secretly, we can't figure out exactly who wrote it for sure and where it came from for sure. The original text was probably a Latin Italian text dating to the 14th or 15th century. Nobody knows for sure. Most manuscript dating to the 15th century. So this is magical information, a spell book that was passed around different parts of the scholarly, mystical world at that time and heralded as worth its weight in gold, if not more, more so. And of course, a lot of these things, these ancient texts, they really were, in many cases, just passed along orally, through oral history. And sometimes magical symbols would be written in temporary forms. For example, something could be scrawled into sand, so that after it was memorized, it could be wiped away. All these methods existed to preserve some of this magical knowledge. And that shows you just how powerful that it is. And if indeed the information that comes from these medieval manuscripts attributed to the Key of Solomon directly came from King Solomon, well, then we are talking about, again, thousands of years of traditions of people protecting this information and passing it along. So before I dig a little deeper into exactly what I'm talking about, well, you should know a little bit more about King Solomon. Of course, King Solomon, he was a monarch of ancient Israel. There's so much I could say about him. And so, it's funny, I'm going to just read a little bit about his Wikipedia entry. And let me just mention something to you about Wikipedia. There are pros and cons of Wikipedia. And I'll give you an example of this. Many years ago, somebody created a Wikipedia page for me, for Joshua P. Warren. And I was like, oh boy, let's see what they say. Because, anybody can go in there and edit the information. I went on there, and it said, right, one of the first things it said was that I was born in South Carolina. And that's not true. I was born in North Carolina. So I went on there, and I corrected my own Wikipedia entry and said I was born in North Carolina. As soon as they realized that I had manipulated my own Wikipedia entry, oh boy, did it hit the fan. And everybody was attacking me, and it just became a big controversy, and finally the page was gone, which is fine with me. I'd rather have no Wikipedia page than a page that's full of inaccuracies. So I think when it comes to living people and a lot of modern stuff, especially political stuff, you can't really just believe in Wikipedia. But when it comes to a lot of historic stuff, usually the information is correct. If it comes to like scientific facts or certain aspects of history, you can get a pretty good summary. And so we're already up on a break. When we come back, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about King Solomon, who God said would be the wisest man to ever live on earth. And then how this applies to these stories about him being a magician who did some pretty amazing things, and how that his secret knowledge was passed along in a form that, well, you are going to learn about in this show. You know what? There are things that I just don't have the time to talk about on this show, or I choose not to talk about on this show. I choose to share only with people who subscribe to my free and spam-free e-newsletter. So I hope it'll be wonderful. Go to joshuapwarren.com, and right there on the homepage, you can put your email address in there, hit the submit button, takes you 2 seconds. You will be a subscriber, and you will instantly receive an email from me, automated. That's got all kinds of online goodies, free good luck charms, free money magic tips, all that. All you have to do is subscribe. And if you like this show and you want to support this show, it's a free show. So if you want to keep me doing it, please go check out the stuff in the Curiosity Shop there on the website. Buy something nice for yourself or a loved one, all at joshuapwarren.com. Yep, that's me. I'm Joshua P. Warren, and you are listening to Strange Things on the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. And I will be right back.
Don't go anywhere. There's more Strange Things coming right up.
You can't see Jessie on Orange Theory. She's pushing, she's pulling, and with strength and cardio all in one class. She's showing up to build the body of her future. Just weeks into Orange Theory, looking leaner, feeling stronger, and her confidence. You can't see it, but she's wearing it everywhere, inside and out. Burn fat, build muscle. Book your free class at orangetheory.com.
Are you stuck in the city life routine? It's time to get outdoors and enjoy the fresh air. You're missing out on bold journeys and brave adventures that are just waiting for you. When's the last time you saw a breathtaking sunrise or a stunning waterfall? Have you hiked at Zion's or four-wheeled at Moab? An RV is the perfect way to blend the comfort and convenience of home with your outdoor adventures. Whatever your needs are, we're here to help. Visit a Motorsportsland RV Center or motorsportsland.com today and let Motorsportsland help you get away.
Want to save money on get a new car? Yeah, of course you do. You need to switch and save at Volkswagen Southtown. We'll lower your payment, give you top dollar for your trade, or chop your interest rate. Guaranteed. Take out the all-new 2025 Tiguan or hop into a new Atlas. Our cars are so fun to drive, you'll feel like you're on the Autobahn. Say on Wiedersehen to high payments and high interest rates. Switch and save at Volkswagen Southtown. Shop our incredible selection at VWSouthtown.com.
Financing through Wells Fargo. See dealer for details.
Did you know
know that tests that could save your life from cancer are now available for little or no cost thanks to the healthcare law called the Affordable Care Act. Let this be the year you get screening tests that can detect cancer early when it's most treatable. Don't let concerns get in the way. Talk to a doctor or other medical professional to learn more about the best cancer testing options for you.
Hey everyone, it's Producer Tom of Coast to Coast AM, and more of the Wizard of Weird starts right now.
Welcome back to the Strange Things on the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. I am your host, the Wizard of Weird, Joshua P. Warren, beaming into your wormhole brain from my studio in Sin City, Las Vegas, Nevada, where every day is golden and every night is silver. Agiatato Zume. And let me give you this disclaimer. I am not a biblical scholar. I am not a true historian of grimoires and medieval texts. I have an impressive library, and I have studied a lot of this stuff throughout my life and experimented with it. But I'm going to do my best to give you sort of my impression of this story. But I may not have all the details right, so don't hold me to having complete clarity. All right. So anyway, in the Old Testament of the Bible, we have King Solomon, and in a nutshell, he was the son of King David. And without going too in depth here, King David, he had a child from an adulterous relationship, and God punished him for that, and the child died. But then, in order to make peace, God said, now I'll give you another child, and I will bless this child. And the name Solomon apparently means peace. So Solomon, when he became, like, maybe they're saying 15 years old, he became this king. And at one point in his life, God came to him in a dream and said, what would you like? I'll give you whatever you want. And so Solomon said that he wanted wisdom so that he could rule his people effectively. And so that impressed God so much that God said, you know what? I'm so glad that you were not selfish and greedy. You didn't ask for a bunch of money and power. I'm not only going to give you wisdom, you will be the wisest man to ever live. And that, of course, will bring you all of these other things you desire. And sure enough, he became this incredibly, almost unimaginably wealthy, powerful king, as they say, penultimate ruler of Israel and Judah. And he built the first temple in Jerusalem, dedicating it to Yahweh, or God. And of course, there are all these stories about how smart he was. You might remember that, I guess one of the most famous ones is that it's called the Judgment of Solomon, where two women came to him one day and they had a baby, and they each said, I'm the mother of this child. And he had to figure out who the real mother was. So he resolved this by saying, well, let's just cut the child in half and we'll share it between the two. And as soon as he did that, one woman said, no. She renounced her claim, proving that she would rather give the child up than see it killed. And so Solomon said, well, then that woman who showed compassion has got to be the true mother. And so he gave her the whole child. Okay, so these are the kinds of stories attributed to him. But he had so much wealth, so much power. People to this day are still searching for King Solomon's treasure. You can read about it all day long. Well, here's the thing about the Bible. There are a lot of stories that have always been attributed to biblical characters that did not make the edit into the final official King James version of the Bible that most of us in this country read. There are all these texts out there that may or may not be reflections of those characters. Some people, of course, debate the reality of all the characters in the Bible. There's no point in getting into all this because we don't have a time machine, and we're never going to be able to go back and verify every little element of these people. But going all the way back to some of the earliest historians, there have been these additional tales about the life of King Solomon. And I believe that one of the earliest mentions of what I'm about to tell you came from the Roman Jewish historian named Josephus. and he was born in AD 37. That's a long time ago. AD 37. He was one of the first people, I believe, who sort of passed along this part of Jewish mysticism dealing with what is known as the Seal of Solomon. And basically what that means is that supposedly Solomon had this legendary signet ring. And I don't know if God told him how to make it, or I don't know how he learned to make this. But anyway, it had this special magical symbol on it, and it was so powerful that it allowed him to control demons and do all kinds of other magical stuff. And apparently it was described as having sort of a six-pointed star on it. I believe it was bejeweled, and it had a variety of ancient Hebrew figures on it. And I don't know what they all mean, but supposedly the Star of David that the Jewish people use was inspired by this six-pointed star on his ring known as the Seal of Solomon. So the story, therefore, jumps into the Middle Ages when this book called The Key of Solomon, or The Greater Key of Solomon, it has various different names, started appearing. And this is supposed to be a book that exemplifies all the magic that Solomon knew, not just the magic he used on this ring. The story in the book, going back to all these different languages, again, Latin, Italian, Greek, the Key of Solomon is this manuscript that was the deathbed testament of King Solomon to his son, distilling all the angelic wisdom he received in his lifetime, and provided detailed instructions on conjuring things, divining and summoning God's power, to work with experiments or spells. It's all in there. And when you look through the Key of Solomon, there are a bunch of different symbols that are basically talismans that almost look like they could be turned into a ring. And later on, there was this other book that came out called The Lesser Key of Solomon, and that one was more dedicated to lower spirits and like the demonic world and all that. So again, this is a lot to dig into, and in a podcast, I'm telling you the bulletin points. You can look into all this on your own. But there are these two manuscripts that are generally called like the Greater Key of Solomon and the Lesser Key of Solomon, and they have all these magical symbols in them that are just circles, but they all have very intricate and sometimes quite beautiful, certainly very mysterious, weird artwork on them. And these are just like sigils. And each one represents a certain type of power by tapping into an angel or another spiritual being. As a matter of fact, I'm holding in my hand a book that I believe was published originally in 1904 by the English occultist named Aleister Crowley. A lot of people call him Crowley because they heard that song by Ozzy Osbourne, Mr. Crowley. But no, Crowley, he said something like, those who think of me foully call me Crowley. Those who think of me as holy call me Crowley, to help people remember. Now, Aleister Crowley was a very intelligent, accomplished, complex man. And he is one of the greatest forces in popularizing a lot of mysticism, metaphysics, occultism in the Western world. But I'll tell you that he was a sick puppy. If you read in detail about some of the rituals he liked to do, some of them are pretty darn disgusting, but that's really kind of neither here nor there. I have this book in my hands called The Three Magical Books of Solomon, The Testament of Solomon and His Greater and Lesser Keys in one volume. And it was written with a couple other people. So for example, and this version of it is about 300 pages. It's got lots of symbols in it. And I'll just read to you a couple things here. It says, Solomon promises that we can, using these symbols, Solomon promises we can, 1, obtain information, 2, destroy our enemies, 3, understand the voices of nature, 4, obtain treasure, 5, heal diseases, etc. I have taken these 5 powers at random, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes on here in another section, and he says, this part of the book is divided into 4 parts. The first part is a book of evil spirits called Goetia, showing how he bound up those spirits and used them in several things, whereby he obtained great fame. 2, the second part is a book of spirits, partly good and partly evil, which is named the Theurgia Goetia, all aerial spirits, etc. Number 3, the third part is a book governing the planetary houses and what spirits belong to every degree of the signs and planets in the signs, called the Pauline Art. And the fourth part of this book is called the Almodel of Solomon, which contains 20 chief spirits who govern the 4 altitudes and the 360 degrees of the zodiac. You know what, folks? You read this stuff and you say, I don't know if this is real or not. But there is one way you can kind of find out. You experiment with it and see what happens. Well, I did. And guess what? It often works so well, it's scary. It's something you have to take seriously. When we come back, I will tell you how I became working with these symbols and what happened. I'm Joshua P. Warren. You're listening to Strange Things on the iHeartRadio and Coast to Coast AM Paranormal Podcast Network. And I will be back after these important messages.
Don't go anywhere. There's more Joshua P. Warren and Strange Things coming right up.
Welcome.
Hey, the Coast to Coast AM YouTube channel is waiting for you. Go to coasttocoastam.com for more information.
Yes. All right. Put my shoes on. Bye.